The Final Furlong podcast is proudly brought to you by Jeff Banks Bet. Get up to £500 refunded as real money for new Jeff Banks online accounts after your first month of betting. Use promo code FFP500 at jeffbanks.bet.
Great to have you with us for the Final Furlong podcast. Aintree breakdown, Adam Mills, George Gorman and Ginger Joe from the Ginger Joe Sports Show alongside me, Emmet Kennedy, breaking down all the action from Aintree, where the feature race, the Grand National, for the third time is won by a father and son. All of them from Ireland. The Carberries with Bobby Joe, Papillon for Ted and Ruby Walsh, and now Willie and Patrick have Nick Rockett winning the Grand National with a stellar weight-carrying performance. And almost that, Adam, should be the first talking point. This is an incredible weight-carrying effort from Nick Rockett. He's carrying a more weight than many clouds, pretty close to the weight that Red Rum was carrying back in the day. Has the race just entirely changed as the Grand National? How good was Nick Rockett? And how much of a dominance is Willie Mullins now in the jumps game?
Well, is it a weight-carrying performance? I'm not sure it is when the numbers 3, 1 and 4 fill the places. Last performance, which is kind of what this race has become. But, you know, to answer the end of your question, Willie Mullins is dominant, but I don't really see it as a problem. This idea of, we shouldn't have that many in the race. You think, well, they're all for different owners. They've all been campaigned differently. Imagine how hard it is in that yard to keep all of these owners happy. And to be able to say to all these owners, this is the plan, and I know you're going to run against 4 others of mine, but that's the way it works. It is still a good race. It's an enjoyable race to watch, but it's never coming back. It's not like Aintree going to go, you know what we're going to do? We're going to put another 2 foot on Beaches next year. There's no way that they'll never do it. So you've got to get over it. You've got to get used to the fact that it is a glorified hurdle race, but it's a really entertaining glorified hurdle race, and the right horses have filled the places. The connections I feel sorry for are what I would call the handicap connections. And maybe it's a little bit of pocket talking because as you know, if you listen to this podcast, been very sweet on Senior Chief all year long. Finished 6th, got me money back on the day, didn't get any each way because Anti-Post was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Senior Chief is probably the handicap horse in the frame, but he can't compare. It's there. But equally speaking, it is still a handicap. It's not like Nick Rockett would have won a Gold Cup. And if they'd run, I know the way you're thinking, he'd have beaten this lot by 10 lengths, in my opinion. Yeah. So it's still a handicap, but I think you have to stop looking for, you don't need to be £10 well in anymore. What you need to be is a classy horse. And that's what we got. And it's brilliant. I think it's a great story. Everyone complaining about Willie Mullins, just this man is a gentleman, knows his stuff. You only have to see the little snippets of like the emotion with Patrick. And even when Constitution Hill fell, there's that great meme from ITV of like, Willie's not watching Lossiemouth on his binoculars. He looks straight back. What's happened to Constitution Hill?
Yeah.
Then I can the race. This guy's a genius. Just learn from him. Everything he does has got a plan in mind. Brilliant performance. If any of Willie's had won, you'd have said fair play. And each one of them, in their own way, has made their own way to the race. There's nothing better for National One racing than Willie Mullins, and we should embrace it.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, Joe. I think it's eloquently put. Just dealing with Willie Mullins on a personal basis, like, he is incredibly personable. So is Aidan O'Brien, by the way. They're very engaging. They're very supporting. They're very appreciative of the exposure, which they're 2 of the biggest names in the game. So that just seems like a strange thing in the first place. But they really appreciate the conduit that this is to get to the fans, and greatly appreciate all of that work. And they go out of their way to make time for everybody in racing media and for the fan base as well. It is a measure of the man that he broke down in tears the way that he did. And it obviously means so much that Patrick is the one who's partnered the winner of the race. But he's the first trainer in racing history to saddle the 1st, 2nd and 3rd in the Grand National. It's an extraordinary achievement, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a remarkable race to watch, really. I understand we'd had a few negative comments, but how can you take away from what Willie Mullins has just achieved? And something that is going slightly under notice, should we say, is the fact that with Nick Rockett winning the Grand National, that gives Walk in the Park a Grand National Gold Cup double in the same season. With, of course,
show.
I know the way you're thinking, winning 2. So that's just enhanced his price a little bit more for next season. I just thought that was fantastic to see, because a lot of the times with these Walk in the Parks, I mean, we've seen the likes of sort of John Bond try over 2 miles, but his progeny have really actually excelled over these sort of extended trips. Just to win a Grand National and a Gold Cup in the same year for one side, I just thought that was really remarkable myself. That touched me a little bit in that sense. If we're saying Nick Rockett had a good performance, I mean, his season was just tremendous. He went from winning a Thyestes to a Bobby Joe to winning a Grand National. I mean, it's just remarkable that he's managed to run so well and win all three of those races. But then on that basis as well, you have to mark up Iron Maximus to go and do what he did off 167 to finish second. Grangeclare West was possibly going to be in with a winning chance before making an error at the final fence too. So, look, we in a glorified cross-country race and things like that all we want, but I found it as enjoyable as ever myself, and I really enjoyed the way that the race panned out. Take my hat off to Willie Mullins. What a guy. Incredible for our sport. Class personified through the yard, and it shows off on the biggest days. I mean, what more can we ask for?
Eloquently put, and I echo and agree with every single thing you've just said there. George, from a jockey's perspective, it's funny how narratives change so quickly. There was this really negative aspect to, Patrick Mullins is riding Gaelic Warrior. Oh, that horse has got no chance. Oh, he's riding Salvatore Mundi in the sprint. That horse is obviously working like a train. He's got no chance. Oh, he's on Nick Rockett in the Grand National. No chance. Salvatore Mundi comes out and bolts up at Aintree. He gives Gaelic Warrior a brilliant ride in a race we'll talk about a little bit later on. And he was superb on Nick Rockett in the Grand National. It is funny how narratives change very quickly in racing.
Yeah, no, it's funny, actually, sort of how the way you have to ride a Grand National's changed as well. Like we were used to, say, 20 years ago, you wouldn't see the winner for the first circuit. Like, they'd be smuggled out the back and they'd sort of make their way through. It almost seems now like the way a lot of the main contenders were handy early, took a breather halfway, and then came sort of soaring back into contention, like Nick Rockett, like Grangeclare West, and like a few of the others. But yeah, Patrick's given him an amazing ride. Like how he's managed to fill him up enough to sort of, it's not quite swinging, but he's not far off it. Like 4 out, the way he comes through, it was an excellent ride, and particularly like you said, the ride on Gaelic Warrior was fantastic. I thought it was, obviously I was on Grangeclare West. I thought Brian Hayes to have a day in the sun. However, you would think he might have felt a bit aggrieved afterwards, and actually I think they interviewed him on ITV Racing. He was beaming from ear to ear. Yeah. The ride he had off that horse. So was it 5 or 6 out? He's absolutely sent him like nearly outside the wings, and he's cleared the fence with daylight to spare. Like he's a proper horse. Like I say, I was all over him for the Gold Cup, but I think he was a bit unlucky. But then, you need a lot of luck in the National, don't you? But yeah, I think we might have lost a bit in terms of a spectacle, in terms of what the fences were before, but we've gained as much as we've lost in terms of the quality of race this is nowadays. Like, so it's always like a Grade 1 handicap now, isn't it? Like it's very nearly like and in terms of that, it's completely unique. Like we don't have anything else like it in terms of that. And for people saying it's a glorified cross-country race, I'll argue it's more what it used to be, was a glorified cross-country race. Because you were popping away, and horses that stayed 2.5 miles were winning it. Nowadays, you can't pop away for a circuit. I say you have to be in the van, you go hard for 4 miles, and the best horse wins. It's as simple as that.
I would completely agree with that as well. I would also like to thank you, George. Thank you sincerely, because you talked me on to Grangeclare West. I've always liked that horse, but you'll remember we did the Novice Chase preview at Christmas 2 years ago, and we were all over him for the big Novice Chase. But I'd gone cold on him until you explained to me, no, the reason that horse ran at Navan was to qualify for the Grand National. Don't worry about that run. Don't worry about it. Just focus on the DRF run. That proves to you who he really is, and that proves what he can do. And that is now what we're going to be looking for, Adam. Like, you can try to be very clever about trying to find a horse like Duffel Coat, or a poor old Mr. Van Gogh, like these battle-hardened stayers who'll stay all day and maybe they're lightly weighted. Actually, what you're now looking for is a horse who's not quite good enough for the Gold Cup, but good enough to run well in that division. I Am Maximus, Grangeclare West, Meeting of the Waters, for example. He's been given a different campaign, but he could probably finish 5th in the Gold Cup if you wanted him to. And of course, the winner, Nick Rockett, as well, coming down the Thyestes and Bobby Joe route. You're looking for that kind of a horse going forward.
Yeah, that's basically I don't want to say you're looking for the Gold Cup also Rams, but you are looking at that division, that kind of good enough to win a Grade 1, but good enough to win races like the Bobby Joe and other such preparations throughout the season. I think you're also looking for a horse that specifically campaigned at the Grand National. I don't think you can look for a horse who's going to go to the National having been to Cheltenham. And I think you'd have to be thinking, and I think Willie Mullins has got this right now. He's worked out, you know what, if we're going to have the National, then we've got to decide in October that the Grand National is the aim. And if you look at all of Willie's horses, that's where they've gone. None of these horses were sort of redirected in terms of it. They've all been given time to get ready for this race, and it's paid off massively. You know, even you have to give sort of a spare thought for Minella Kakuna that Johnny Burke's saddle slipped approaching the first, and yet he's still gone round with a saddle slip for 4 miles and finished 7th, beaten best part of 10 lengths. You know, it's every horse there has had the Grand National in mind. None of them. And I'd say probably if you went through the order, you'd have to get as far as Hewick before you had a horse that was campaigned for any other target this season. All of that first 7, the connections are decided long before Christmas, the Nationals. And I don't really think the days of horses winning races like the Hennessy or the Welsh National are gone. You will not win a Beecher Chase and come and win this. You won't win a Welsh National. You won't win a Grand National trial. You won't win any other staying race throughout the season. You've got to be campaigned in the top level with the National in mind. And if I'm going to have anti-post again in the future in this race, which I might not, but if I do, it's got to be with the view of, could this horse run to 150? And if they can't, what's the point?
So you're looking for something that could finish 5th in a Lexus or an Irish Gold Cup. Yeah. That's really what you're looking for. You're not looking for a horse that can win the Welsh Grand National or the Beecher Chase. Does the race still appeal to you from an anti-post perspective with that in mind? I was going to go to Joe there, but then he got taken. Oh, he's back. Does the race still appeal to you from an anti-post perspective, Joe, with that whole different change of the type of horse you're now looking for?
Sure. I mean, my anti-post often varies, or should we say leans towards Cheltenham like the majority of people, but I don't mind a swing at 1 or 2. A little bit of a way out. I'd suppose one that you could almost consider for next year already would be, what are they going to do with Embassy Gardens? He could be very much a sort for a Grand National next year. Hasn't quite come to the fore, but he's ran well, in some big races already. He's got the beat in a Monty's Star when they met this season. Similar sort of profile to like Adam said. He could probably go and finish 4th or 5th in a Gold Cup if he really wanted to. Just be interesting to see how they campaign him as well. He is by Shantou out of a network dam who obviously has the likes of Delta Work. So there's sort of plenty of stamina in the pedigree. I'd be interested to see what the plan is of Embassy Gardens going forward, I suppose, on that basis.
I can't believe we're talking about the 2026 Grand National already. We're doing it on the podcast. But if we are going to have that conversation, I'm just going to quickly look up prices here. And I'll go to the Odds Checker website to check him out, seeing as Odds Checker sponsor Joe's excellent Ginger Joe Sports Show, which you should all be checking out. I'd like a price on Dancing City for the Grand National, please, because he was going real. Again, we'll talk about that race in a little bit, but he was going real well, and weight's no object anymore at Aintree, so he'll stay. He'll need to brush up on his jumping because he made a horrible mistake at the third last in the Brown Advisory, and then he's obviously crumbled when in contention at Aintree. But he'd be on my mind. He's a strong stayer. He's got plenty of class. He can run well in these big open company races, but probably won't be good enough to win them. So I'd imagine they're just going to work back from the Grand National next year. Get Townend on board. Happy days. Let's go. Does anything stand out to you, George Gorman? You love an anti-post bet.
It's not going to surprise anyone. I think I'd probably fancy Grangeclare West again next year.
Yeah.
I think he took to it so well. I'm looking at this point for, is there something that can finish 3rd or 2nd in a Gold Cup, I think. And Grangeclare West is that horse to me. Of the others, I wouldn't put you off Dancing City. To be honest, some of the main contenders here, some of the front runners here were so young that I can't really see. I could see 2 of the top 5 finishing in the top 5 again next year for sure. It's just picking which ones they're going to be. And I'd say Grangeclare West, like I said, was probably unlucky and could be campaigned in a way where he sort of arrives there again next year, maybe off slightly less weight, not matters that much anymore. Maybe like a Minella Kakuna's still young and was probably again a bit unlucky. Those are the sort of horses I'd be looking at. which used to be almost the wrong way to play it. Like if you thought horse was a bit unlucky the year before and you played it the next year when it was there with £10 more, it had no hope. I remember, was it Black Appalachia was the only example I can think where I played one lemon, got it right. Because unfortunately he was nearly the man that shot Bambi, wasn't he, that year? He finished second to Dopus.
He was.
But I was probably the only one screaming him home. But I wouldn't stray too far from really the main contenders from this year. There's not too many of them are getting on in age.
Yeah, Grangeclare West will be 10 next year, but he's very lightly raced. There's very little mileage in those legs, so he's going to be interesting. And again, weight's not really going to matter. I kind of feel like Maximus would have won had he had that prep race. If he'd gone for the prep race, if he'd managed to get the Bobby Joe in, who knows where he would have finished. Maybe Nick Rockett beats him. Maybe Paul Townend rides him in the race. That was another thing that I thought was really interesting, Adam. Just reading the Sporting Life column with Willie Mullins the night before, he emphasised how difficult he thought it was for Paul Townend to get off Nick Rockett and stay to Maximus, and that Patrick was going to have a great chance, and then referenced how well Patrick had gone in the Fox Hunter chase and that he'd given Gaelic Warrior a brilliant ride. He also really talked up Grangeclare West, thought that Brian Hayes was going to get a great spin out of him, really talked up Manila Cocooner, thought he was going to get a great spin from Johnny Burke, really talked up Meeting of the Waters and that Danny had chosen right and that he was going to be a big player. The only one he didn't talk up was the horse that didn't get around and appreciated, said, we're praying for a miracle that he stays. All of the horses he talked up all ran screamers.
I think the reason Danny rode Meeting of the Waters was because he rode him last year. I've got a feeling in that sense it was JP wanted him on again, and JP runs this game now, doesn't he? Let's be fair. So I think the fact that Danny rode him last year, because he crossed the line, he crossed the final fence in the lead last year on much softer conditions, and I think he saw it out much better this year, probably because there was a little bit of a faster surface. I think that helped him see out the race a little bit better. I'm not necessarily saying he can get any closer next year, because I think what we saw this weekend was the best of him. But look, it's very interesting that Mo vocal about the chances of each of his runners, and he pretty much got it spot on with the way they finished too.
Yeah, he did. Adam, your take?
Yeah, I just think all of those horses were lined up at this race, and I think Willie was probably thinking, I'm going to win this with something. And, you know, I'd imagine Willie, all the emotion got lost up, but if you looked in Willie's top pocket, there was probably a combination TriCast bet in there somewhere.
$7,000 it paid. $7,000 to a £1 stake.
They had to ride Appreciate It in a certain, but he was brought down, so you don't actually know. Appreciate It could have been flying at the finish. It's that wide open. For Paul Townend, what could he do? Can't get off Maximus, because if he gets off Maximus and Mark Walsh does him in a finish, he'll think, I've got off the national winner, I've been done. So he had to have a go, and he's very unlucky. It is just fascinating to sort of see the way, and when you look back in hindsight, the way they were all campaigned, and you think, Christ, this was bloody obvious. Yeah. How did I miss? Greatest trainer of all time had 7 horses lined up at this race. Looking at anything else, that was foolish. Just getting to next year's race, I wouldn't really be lumping Anti-Post in the national, but I thought if there was another one to add to the pack, maybe Lecky Watson might be that type.
I love that.
Lecky Watson is not going to win a Gold Cup anytime soon, in my opinion. That kind of slightly smaller owner might be the one to be persuaded. You saw what I did with Nick Rockett. Do you fancy having a go? I'm not going to start betting Anti-Post this far out with him, but it is one that I thought maybe he might go the same kind of route. Let's chuck him in the Thai Estes and see what happens, something like that.
Okay. Well,
with his jumping, he's neat more than he's sort of bold, which is I think what you need for the modern national. Like a lot of these horses, like say Paul Broadway Boy, that sort of wing proper national hunt fences. Once they give one of those national fences a rub, they just get further and further and further away from them. Whereas Lecky Watson is very much wheels up, wheels down, and he's very neat and very clever. I'd like that shout as long as it didn't come up too soft. So I do think he likes to hear
it a little
bit.
It's basically what happened to Broadway Boy in the Hennessy, wasn't it? He hit the second last and suddenly he was on the back foot. And when you haven't got the tactical speed to get yourself back into a winnable position, it's always going to be hard to maintain that front running gallop. That's probably the difference between a horse like Broadway Boy is and Grangeclare West, where after making a mistake, he still managed to find a turn of foot and get himself back into the race. It's just a shame that he lost so much ground, I suppose, at that.
It was a phenomenal effort. Like, he lands at a standstill after 4 miles in essentially what's now a Grade 1 gallop. He literally lands, stood still, and gets going again. Like, that's superhuman. Fine.
And he's one of the horses that's now possibly contributing to Willie Mullins accidentally winning the Trainers' Championship in the UK. I don't think he necessarily...
You say accidentally, Joe, but I wonder, is it accidentally? Sure. And on the Friday, Gentleman to Me produces like a stunning weight-carrying performance to win the Topham under Mark Walsh. Mark Walsh, obviously an incredible jockey who's having a fantastic season. Was it after that, or was it before that? I get a DM from Adam Mills saying, Willie Mullins is 7-1 to be the champion trainer. This is crazy.
So certain shrewd Emmet texted you at 2:30 on the Thursday after the second Grade 1 winner and went, there's 7-1 Willie Mullins to be top trainer. He's so shrewd that he had this grand time of £3.75 on it because he just wanted to use the change up in his account.
Oh no!
And what's even more annoying is that market is now suspended, so you can't even cash out. But yeah, is it an accident, or did Willie just decide, let's just wait for the pieces to actually matter?
Well, if you do manage to land that, Adam, I suppose you've got to put your small winnings on Lecky Watson for next year's Grand National. Now you've talked to them.
We might have a double: Lecky Watson to win the national, to be to champion trainer.
We'll see what price. We'll see what price Jeff Banks ends up going. But right now, 40-1 is available about both Lecky Watson and Dancing City. That doesn't appeal to me right now. We're about to roll into the flat season. Go on.
Is Embassy Gardens there anywhere, Emma, in the betting? I'm not even sure if he's been considered for the race.
I didn't see his price, but it has to be there somewhere. And I know that he didn't. I know he was no match for poor old Corbett's Cross in the National Chase, but yeah, I don't see a price for him, mate.
He was never going that day in the National Hunt Chase, so that wasn't him at all.
Yeah, but the problem with him is that he's now, I'm going to guess he burst, and he's burst twice. So he's not. I would be looking for something a little like £10 better. Is all about him. Yeah, I'm not. There's absolutely no way he's going to end up being a 66-1 shot. So there's no way I'm talking Joe out of that. And he might very well look. He proved on New Year's Day he's a very, very good horse, and if you're giving weight and a beating to Monty Star, even if that horse wasn't fully right on the day, then you're pretty damn good. And you would imagine that he'll be one of the Grand National horses for next year. This is the current state of play for the Trainers' Championship. Dan Skelton, who's been leading the way pretty much since the season began, has almost in some of those Cheltenham previews that he appeared on, effectively been talked about as champion trainer-elect. Wave the white flag, Dan. It's Jover. This is Joe Biden all over again. It is Jover. £3,043,540. He has put up one hell of an effort, but he's about to be swamped by Willie Mullins.
With nearly 800 fewer runners.
He's done it, yeah. That's a good point. Willie has done it with 143 runners so far, 903.
29 winners.
903 for Dan Skelton. 159 winners for Dan. 29 winners for Willie Mullins as things stand. He is sending a battalion to Ayr. I imagine Ethical Diamond will win the Scottish Champion Hurdle. He's going to have a huge chance of going back-to-back in the Scottish National itself. There's been a monster gamble on Chosen Witness today. I'm not even sure if he's going to end up being the number one choice or even if he's the one who's going to win it for him, but he probably will end up winning it. I mean, just very briefly on Dan Skelton, it's hard not to feel sorry for Dan Skelton. He's tried immensely hard all season, and now Willie Mullins has just come along with what I suspect has been a well-executed plan, because they've been talking about this for a while, and Patrick Mullins did say last week if they get enough winners at Aintree, they will not leave it behind them. So I feel like people, again, Adam, were just forgetting the reason Willie Mullins won the Trainers' Championship last year is because he carpet-bombed Cheltenham, did so well there, then did well at Aintree, and then won the big races towards the end of the season. It didn't matter what had happened in the previous months, and people just forgot that.
I'm not sure carpet bomb is the right term. I just feel, and I'm maybe the minority, but Jackie Mullins must be fairly satisfied, because I'd be fairly sure that Willie doesn't have any premature issues in any aspect of his life. But if you look at the way he campaigns his horses, you don't see Willie Mullins throwing horses at Down Royal in October and November. You don't see him throwing his best horses in October or in November at Cheltenham. He's not really bothered about the Betfair chase. He's really only getting started at Christmas. Kopek the board, Final Demand, all the good horses didn't appear till Christmas. And this is what the other trainers have got to learn. The money is in March and April. So why the hell are you trying to win races in November? And
I think Gordon's got a real decision to make. And I thought this last season where you're going, he can farm all the races at the start of the year. And at the moment, that's where he's making his money. That's how he's making his business run. So is he going to go, right, I'm going to be a bit more like Willie, leave it later, have him go run well at spring festivals? If that doesn't come off the first year, it'll decimate his income. Like, it's a very interesting, do you take the safe route and keep cleaning up at the start of the year, keep all the staff paid and everything? I'm sure it won't come to that. But it's a huge change and a huge risk to then try and train them like Willie if he then realises actually he doesn't have the material to beat him no matter how he trains them. I think that's a really interesting spot he's in now.
Yeah, I was just going to I was going to say a really similar thing there to George, and I suppose that's the difference where Gordo is trying to prime his horses 3 times a season. He tries to prime them for October, November. He then tries to prime them again for Cheltenham, and then he does the same for either Aintree or Punchestown, depending on where it's at. And it's not an easy thing to do. This just goes back to how good a training performance it's been for Willie Mullins to be able to get Galopin Des Champs back to Cheltenham and to produce these huge efforts at the same time every single season. Whereas Gordon's almost admitting defeat by trying to take up prize money early, giving himself a break and trying to prime them from Cheltenham, and then depending on what happens there, trying to pick up a bit of prize money at Aintree and Punchestown. It's a very, very difficult task to do. Whereas Willie Mullins has them mapped out in reverse order, really, to make sure that they're primed for the big days. And that's why he's taken the pots. I think Gordo has the ammunition to compete to a degree with Willie Mullins, but he has to make a decision on how he's going to manufacture his campaign with his horses.
This came up in conversation a couple of years ago. Probably Dovan was at the height of his powers for Rich Ritchie. And he said, we really have a decision to make because Paul Nicholls is winning all these big Saturday races. He's getting all these big pots, was the phrase he used. And then we're not really doing anything until March. But then they were winning at Cheltenham and Aintree and Punchestown. Certainly Cheltenham and Punchestown. Now, Paul Nicholls isn't winning those big Saturday pots. But he is excelling at Aintree again, which we'll come to in a little bit. Paul will get his flowers. But Willie Mullins is dominating the Dublin Racing Festival, dominating Cheltenham, dominating Aintree and the Grand National itself, and then everything else that comes after it. It's Willie's world. So what do you do? If you're Gavin Cromwell, Henry de Bromhead, Gordon Elliott, what do you do? Do you go for those big races early in the season and secure all those pots when he's not busy? And then how do you combat him when you're taking him on? This is going to be fascinating to see how this plays out again next year. And to a certain extent, it's going to be really interesting just to see what happens with the British Trainers' Championship. It feels inevitable that Willie Mullins is going to do it, simply because he has the firepower. Dan Skelton doesn't. Even the way Dan Skelton is talking now, he's even saying he's not going to run horses just for the sake of it. Like, it sounds like the white flag is being raised. But there's still Fairy House and Punchestown for Willie as well. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how this all plays out. Final word to you, Adam.
Does it play out? I just think it's very easy to say, it's domination, but I kind of liken it to sort of, if you think back to the mid-90s when Arsenal appointed Arsene Wenger as manager and he went out and he bought all these French names that no one had ever heard of, and like Patrick Vieira was like £1 million or something, which is just
who is this
ridiculous.
Nicholas Anelka?
Yeah, exactly. And that is kind of Willie's approach. I think Patrick constantly references when Gigginstown moved the horses, Willie's thoughts were, how do we get better? How do we have different owners in the yard? How do I recruit better? And you only have to look. I was talking to a friend yesterday and I said, there's this really nice 4-year-old that's just won an AQPS race at Moulin. And I really quite like this. This might be one to pass around to a few owners. And the reply just came back.
Willie's got it.
Actually, the reply came back. Look at the breeding. Look at the trainer. Willie's already looked and it's still in France. Don't bother.
Yeah.
That was kind of, their recruitment is so good. And it's not a coincidence that you don't see Willie Mullins with horses with massive price tags from the Caldwell dispersal. You don't see Willie Mullins with point-to-point winners that cost 600 grand and that look absolutely enormous. What you see Willie Mullins with is horses who just get better and better and better. And he's winning British Grade 1s with horses that are quite frankly average. Let's be honest. You look at some of these horses that won last week at Cheltenham, they were kicked out of sight. Willie's got another tier above this if he wanted to. There was no sign of Factor Foul last week. Kopek the Board wasn't there. He never runs Gallopan at Aintree, and yet he's still winning all these races. This is a master of his craft, one trainer all time. And if you're another trainer, you need to look at Willie and think, what can I learn from him? And I don't know him, but I'd imagine you could probably, if you had the humility, you could phone Willie Mullins and say, if you were me, what would you do, Willie? Yeah. Because I think you have to decide, and Henry de Bromhead and Gordon Elliott, the guys are right, you've got to decide, do I want to win lesser races and take the prize money, or do I want to try and take him on? Because you could hold your horses for Cheltenham and you could sit on them and you could campaign them for a spring campaign and you'll still get beat by Willie Mullins. Yeah. So there is that dilemma of like, actually, maybe I will take the Grade 1 at Down Royal in October because that might have to be my season.
And it's a credit to him as well. A lot of people that are in racing perhaps or newer to the game just assume that he's getting given all of these best horses. And I suppose he is, but he has earned that through his training performances over the years. And I Am Maximus, we've just seen win the Grand National. Now, I Am Maximus was at one stage with Nicky Henderson, and he couldn't get him to jump, he couldn't get him to travel, he couldn't actually get him to race. But again, you've given him to Willie Mullins. He has manufactured this horse into a Grand National winner. He did the same with a horse called Stormy Island. I'm sure you remember.
Yeah.
It was with Paul Nicholls. She couldn't win a dime with when she was at Paul Nicholls' yard. Went back to Willie Mullins, won sort of 3 on the bounce, won another graded race. Look at Galopin de Champs, not even really bred to be a Gold Cup horse, but he's manufactured him, taught him how to race, and he's now a stupendous staying chaser. Like Adam said, and I'm not just taking your words, it's not by coincidence that he has all of the top horses. If you have the money to buy yourself a top horse, you want them with Willie Mullins, because he isn't just getting given the best horses. He has earned that by right and how he has put training performances on weaker horses to get them up to certain levels. Absolute obvious sort of backup point to this. And the same with I Am Maximus. It's obscene. His talent is just obscene. He must be doing something different to everyone else.
If I could just add to that, like, I think I might have said it on here before actually, but I did a summer at Guy Chirel's back in, I think, 2013 maybe, and I was only there for 6 weeks. Willie in person twice to look at horses in those 6 weeks, and Gigginsdown, who at the time had horses with him, went over themselves. I think Brian Cooper came over. That's 1 yard in France. He was there twice in 6 weeks. Like just looking at horses. And at the time, Guy Chirel probably wasn't where a lot of his winners were coming from. Do you think how many other yards was he going through on those trips in person, not sending a bloodstock agent? He went to see them himself. And if he's still doing that, which I presume he is, it's no surprise like the success he's having. And in terms of what Adam said about other trainers phoning him up and asking, that's happening, and that's been happening for some time. I think, again, maybe 10 years ago, Josh and Hayley Moore went over to work there for like a week, and they were both. Josh was already assistant at Gary's, like he was a jockey in his own right. They went over on a fact-finding mission. Like, what's he doing that we're not? Like, if we were doing that, I guarantee others have. And it's good of Willie Mullins to let people do that as well. Yeah,
Lizzie Kelly was over there. Her sister was riding out, at least. She might still be there now, I'm not sure. But Lizzie was riding out Embassy Gardens, funnily enough, as Joe brings that horse up. It was the season he was going for the potato race, and she just fell in love with him. She thought he was an incredible racehorse and was really, really excited about what the horse could go and do. I was saying, like, what were you doing in Willie Mullins' yard? Oh, my sister works there. So, like, there's plenty of people have gone to try and learn from Willie and then bring that back to their parents, to Jane Williams and others. And he is an incredibly humble man and very, very open in terms of sharing that information with people. There was a really heartbreaking story, though, from the Grand National. That is the passing of Celebre D'Allen days after the race, and this has led to an enormous amount of criticism and a huge outpouring of grief on social media. I get it. I understand why emotions are running high. I feel very frustrated for the PHA and the Jockey Club and Aintree and everybody who's worked so hard to make the race as safe as possible. They've done everything right, and yet a horse has still lost his life. But emotions are really running high. Michael Nolan was banned for 10 days on the back of that ride, George. You're a former jockey. Watching the race back, is there anything he could have done differently Do you feel like it's his fault that the horse has died? And what do you make of the outpouring of rage against him?
I think a lot of people are very quick to pile on to this sort of thing. And if you're the sort of person that's been on Twitter and has been commenting about it, just go and watch the race back once more. I think it's appalling he got banned for this ride. I think he's done absolutely nothing wrong. The horse is bang there in contention, 3 out. He's still on the bridle nearly after 3 out. He gets a squeeze down to 2 out. Mihold sits up on him immediately to let him coast home. The only reason he's given him a couple of squeezes and a slap behind the saddle just to keep the revs up to pop the last and finish in his own time. It's the kindest ride he could possibly have given the horse. Did he have to jump the last? No. Was there any good reason not to? Also, no. It was not like the horse completely gone out like a light. His chance had gone. That's why he sat up on him. I think it's absolutely appalling the BHA have given him a ban for that. You'd see twice as bad on a weekly basis go unpunished. And I think it's just because it's the biggest stage of all and the horse has come back with heat stroke. They've gone, we better make a point out of this just in case racing's detractors come after it. And now they've really shot themselves in the foot because it looks awful because now the horse has died and the jockey's got banned for carrying on a horse that has no more left to give. It's the difference. The horse isn't legless. The horse isn't legless at all. He's still going forward, and Mihold's able to jump last of him. You look at the second last; he jumped it absolutely fine. If that horse was out on his feet, that's when you'd see if he'd split the fence in the second last in half, and then Mihold's down to the last and tried to jump the last. He's made another mistake, and then he's pulled up and obviously eventually died of heat stroke. Then I'd understand, but this horse, I don't. You'd see most local point to point, you'd see 10 times worse than this. And I'm not saying it's right. It absolutely isn't. I'm all for this rule being enforced more regularly on British racecourses, but this wasn't where you should do it. It's more when you see people trying to get horses round for a handicap mark that are clearly tired. I just think this was the wrong place to make a stand about this sort of thing because poor Mihold, they say he's deleted his social media. And his face is everywhere. He's done nothing wrong. He would have loved that horse as much as everyone else. And he's a kind bloke and a horseman. And I just think it's absolutely awful what's been done to him here.
Well, this is the problem with some of these rules, though, as well, Adam. If you're going to impose a 10-day ban for excessive use of the Pro-Cush, which the BHA themselves openly admit is not a welfare issue, and then a 28-day ban for the totting up procedure of those very same Pro-Cush bans, then the optics of you giving a 10-day ban to a jockey who is perceived to have ridden a racehorse to death, that's not going to work. And this then blows up in your face because you're the ones who made a big thing about this. Oh, we have to improve the optics of racing. It will increase the viewing figures. Well, the viewing figures are terrible. They're garbage, is what the viewing figures are. The attendances are up. The betting turnover is up. The viewing figures are atrocious. That's another story that we'll cover in a little bit. But I don't really know what Mihold could have done any differently. I'm not entirely certain.
He hit the horse once.
Yeah.
Unless there was a reminder at some point I missed after a fence earlier in the race. He's given the horse one tap behind the saddle with the whip in the backhand position, not in the forehand
perception then, George, the perception comes from the stewards giving that ban to him that, oh, this is your fault. You're the one to blame for this. Exactly. And if you're giving out bans to jockeys for excess, you nearly disqualified Jim Crowley from winning a King George. For what? Doing his job? Obtaining the best possible finishing position? The number one rule in racing, didn't hurt the horse. The horse wasn't marked. There was no damage done to the racehorse. Nobody was up in arms protesting, oh my goodness, Hookham was... Nonsense. Absolute nonsense. And then all of this spirals into, oh, now, by the way, this jockey has a 10-day ban. Now you need to ban him even harder. For what? What exactly...
I'd nearly say if you back the horse and you're watching it and you weren't the most versed in equine welfare, if you back the horse, you'd almost think he gave up on it quite quickly. Yeah, I think he was given that nice a ride.
Yeah,
he was very, very kind to the horse. I'm sorry, Adam. I forgot to say that he literally used his stick once, unless there was a reminder after a fence. It was only once used to persuade the horse to go forward, and it wasn't a waving full. It was literally his arm came up to about his hip and he gave it a little tap behind the saddle. That was it. I think it's a dreadful decision by the BHA, and it needs to be appealed.
But there's emotions run high with this stuff, and this is where language is crucial. Because I was seeing on social media today, we need to impose restrictions on the ages of horses who run in the Grand National. Why is the answer always, we're going to restrict? You won't have a race. You're getting very, very close to the point where the Grand National is indefensible, unjustifiable, it has to be banned. And if you do that, well, then that's racing banned. That's the whole purpose of Animal Rising's argument. The reason they want the Grand National banned is if you ban the Grand National, you cannot justify any horse race anywhere in the world.
But having a restriction based on age is ridiculous anyway.
Stupid.
Because it's the same as humans. Like there's always outliers. Are you going to ban Jamie Vardy from playing football because he's too old? Do you know what I mean? Like he's still absolutely banging goals. We
George,
had a horse.
There's more of an outrage over a racehorse dying than a human dying on a racecourse.
Yeah. I said we had a pointer here that retired at 16, unbeaten in his last 8. Like, if you manage these horses correctly, and they're like with him, he liked fast ground, so he didn't get to run that much. So his career went longer, and he retired because he was passed by a younger horse, which he then got back up and beat. And we just went, you know what? That wouldn't have happened 2 years ago, so we retired him.
Yeah,
and like, it's ridiculous to have restrictions based on age. They're animals. They mature at different ages. They might miss an early part of their career. Certain stallions, like you look at Midnight Legends, like my own horse out the back. Like, Midnight Legends regularly run career bests at like 12 or 13. Yeah. So you're going to not let Midnight Legends the national because they're 13 coming into it off the back of a career best.
Well, Willie Mullins said in the lead up to Cheltenham. Willie Mullins was saying in the lead up to Cheltenham, you won't see some national hunt horses at their physical peak until they're 9. It's well known 100%. that flatbred horses don't reach their physical maturity until they're 5. That's one of the frustrations of them being retired, certainly after their juvenile campaign, but really after their classic campaigns, that you don't get to see these horses achieve their actual best physical and mental maturity.
And I'd say it makes my point for me. The 2 13-year-olds that were meant to run in the national in terms of Roy Marge and Celebre D'Allen could be wrong. I'm pretty sure both were on career high marks coming into the race. So it completely destroys the point about going, well, 13-year-olds shouldn't be running. He was in the form of his life. He'd never been better.
Adam, do you have a take on this?
I think racing has to very quickly get behind Michael Nolan. We have to get behind him because he is going to get the book thrown at him. And I guess for me, my point would be, realistically, jumping the last, there's only 7 horses that can win. So if you're going to have a go at Michael Nolan for what he did, then surely the likes of Chantry House, Brave Man's Game, Vanillier, they're beaten miles. Question why Michael Nolan kept riding. You got to kind of question, well, what is James Bowen still riding Chantry House for? He can't win. And there's a very fine line here. Now, it is also very difficult. This isn't a lame horse. This is a horse with heat stroke. And it's very difficult to judge. And I personally think if Celebre D'Allen was an 8-year-old, there would not have been a ban. But because he's 13, there's a kind of or maybe we should look at that. And he has pulled up. In hindsight, you either got to clarify the rule and you need to say to the jockeys, the moment your winning chance has gone, you've got to pull up in this race. Or you've got to do the other way and say, you know what, we have to leave this in the jockey's hands to make the decision. And it's a really fine line. And I appreciate the BHA are in a difficult position because this really is the only race that the general public really gets involved in if they're not fans of the sport. So you've got that delicate balance to strike. But we have now created a rod for our own back because we've gone out of our way to make this race unbelievably safe, which is the right thing to do. But we've now got nowhere to go. And quite frankly, a 13-year-old life, and there is nowhere for racing to defend this because we've given a ban to the jockey. So we've effectively said, as an industry, we think Michael Nolan has done the wrong thing. Whether you agree with that or not, we've said that as an industry, we think he's done the wrong thing. The horse has lost its life. Where are we with this race now? Are we now saying, if you're crossing the Melling Road and you're 10 lengths back, you need to pull up? Because it's got to be one or the other. You can't have it both ways. We're in a real difficult position here. I really feel for the jockey. I'm sure in hindsight he probably wouldn't have jumped the last. And actually, if he doesn't jump the last, he doesn't get a ban. So it's an absolutely impossible situation for everyone to be in. And racing needs to get behind a jockey who's made a mistake like this.
By the way, if you're disappointed that we're not screaming and roaring, "Oh, ban Micheál, he should never be allowed ride in racing again. How is anybody going to allow him ride a horse ever again?" We don't conform to the narrative on this show. And everybody just gives their opinions. And you try and see the big picture. That's the whole point of the show. By the way, the role of the media is to question the authority. It's not to just uncritically parrot their establishment talking points and just go along with, "Oh, yes, that's what they say, so that's what we're going to do." No, that's not our job. Our job is to question what they say. And in this instance, I think George and Adam have both made excellent points, as is Joe, for that matter. Just to put a button on this, Joe. I mean, emotions run high, and I understand why they run high. A horse has lost its life. We've been trying everything we can to make this race as safe as possible. But this is really dangerous territory, as Adam was saying. If you ban the Grand National, racing is done for. There's no coming back from that. And even just watching the race back this morning, like I don't know what that man could have done differently.
Yeah, I fully agree. I echo everything that George and Adam have just said. And this is a subject that I feel is really close to my heart, and genuine other racing fans too, because I understand the scenario, but it is very important as well to point out that these animal rising, horse racing activists, they come out once a year and it's for the Grand National. Now, it's important for people that aren't within racing to understand that these animals, they get 5-star treatment. People devote their lives to making sure that these horses are fit and healthy as possible. Nobody cares about these animals more than the handlers, more than the staff, and genuine racing fans. I watch racing whether I've had a bet or not. I love horse racing. Now, we want them as fit, as healthy as possible, because that is how we get the best performances. And good horses prove that that they enjoy racing. You look at Honeysuckle, for example, running to a mark of 160 every single time. Now, she couldn't do this unless she was at peak condition, peak physical health, etc., etc. We want these horses to be in the best condition possible so they can perform the way they do. Now, if they to run, there's nothing that a jockey can do to influence that. They will just not run. It's very simple. You can't override a 500-kilo horse by using a pro cush. It just doesn't happen. We within racing want everything to be right. We want the fittest, the healthiest, the most physically pristine animals so we can get these peak performance. Like I said, good horses prove that this is something that they enjoy to do. Look at the likes of Many Clouds, who we unfortunately lost. I've never known a horse try so hard to go and win a race. And this is possibly where we missed the trick with the ITV series Full Gallop. We were just discussing the jockey's title. This was a massive opportunity for us to make the public aware of the care, the attention to detail that these horses get every single day before the staff even get fed themselves. And we missed the big opportunity there. At some point, we've got to stand up for our sport and stop being too, I can't even think of the word, too abiding to what the animal rising people are suggesting. You know, we had one death in 2 Grand Nationals now. Yes, it was unfortunate, but believe you me, like us within racing are the people that really felt we happen. You know, we are the ones that love these horses more than the animal rising people that just decide to come out once a year and suddenly think that they know everything about horses. They understand that the pro cush is, you know, what they still define it as a whip. You know, they like to post pictures online and say RIP, etc. It's really, really, yeah, exactly. It is really frustrating to see as a horse racing fan, but we need to educate the wider public more. I think shying away from the matter doesn't do us any good. At some point, we've got to stand up to the public. And like I said, without horse racing, we lose thousands and thousands of thoroughbreds. And again, one of the beauties of our sport is that by keeping these horses in peak condition, that not only do we get to see them have long careers, run into these peak performances, but they will then also produce the future horses of our sport. Look at Annie Power, for example. She loved to race. She dug deep every time. She was managing to hit these perfect performances. You can't do that with unhealthy, unfit horses, not physically ready horses. You know, everything about our sport is getting these horses primed and ready for big events so they can put on the show, that they want. We treat them as athletes. And now from Annie Power, we now have the likes of Mystical Power. It's a beautiful thing, but these animals jump on the bandwagon and say, well, we lost a horse there because people were trying to gain a fiver. I will watch racing whether I've had a bet or not. I do watch racing whether I've had a bet or not. I love horse racing. I love looking at the breeding side of things. I love looking into the finer details of how they're looked after. But we need to educate the wider public and stop pondering to the idea that racing is a dangerous sport, because when you look at the numbers, it's just not true. And the problem is as well, the final thing I'll say is they are basing a tiny minority of the sport and basing it on the entire picture. It's just not the right thing to do.
Well, their famous line, Joe, their famous line on television when they appear on Sky or GB News or whatever to make their debates is, we just want to have a national conversation. We just want to engage in a national conversation about the relationship between humans and animals. Well, guess what? Yeah. We've had a national conversation. You had 300 people turn up to your debate at to the protest of the Grand National at Aintree in 2023. You had 80 people 80 turn up to your protest of the Derby in 2023 as well. That's why you went away in 2024, and that's why you've been very, very quiet in 2025, because let's just compare those numbers to the paying race-going public who turned up to Aintree. Over 150,000 people in attendance for 3 days at the Grand National at Aintree, 60,000 people in attendance on the Saturday. The viewing figures are awful now, but it's still 5.2 million people who are watching, and the betting turnover of this year's Grand National was up on it from a year before. So the viewing figures are ITV's fault, not anybody else's. 600 million people tuning in to watch the race around the world. 17 million people in Britain placed a bet on the Grand National. So the national conversation has been had, and the vast majority of people want to eat red meat, they want to have pets that they love, and they want to place a bet in the Grand National. So they can head off with their deluded nonsense. And also, the paragons of virtue that are Animal Rising have literally said in debates with me, on social media, in debating Richard Hoyles on Talk TV and GB News, that not only do they want to ban horse racing, they want to ban the breeding of racehorses, which means the extinction of the thoroughbred breed. When I challenged an Animal Rising spokesperson on this, they said, well, it wouldn't be the extinction of the species. There'd still be wild horses in fields in Scotland. They would rather have no racehorses whatsoever than the 0.02% of a risk of an equine fatality on a racecourse. That's how deluded these people are.
And they've got no plan for where to put the racehorses once they ban racing up as well.
It would be literally abandon them in fields, George, leading to the greatest equine welfare disaster since World War I.
Yeah, 100%. It's important that we do speak up for our sport as well, because there's so much nonsense that gets spread around on terrestrial TV, like re-reported without fact checking. If we don't speak up for it, like I think one of the BBC reporters actually said on the Thursday that it's such a shame all the checks that all the adjustments they've made to the Grand National haven't helped because we lost Willie de Hull today. Died on the hurdles course. That was reported on the BBC.
Yeah, but the BBC are gone. The BBC are gone. They're not a friend of racing.
You have to speak up for your sport.
Yeah, but listen,
the BBC are getting it wrong.
The now interim CEO of the BHA, Brant Dunshee, went on Sky News on one of Kay Burley's final appearances and debated the head of PETA. And he just sat there and took all the abuse from her. And at no point did he ever turn around and say, hang on a second, your organization is run by somebody who believes that human beings and animals should have no interaction with one another whatsoever. She is firmly against the idea of pet ownership. If you have a pet that you love, she thinks you're disgusting and vile. If you're involved with cross-country riding, or if you've got children doing cross-country riding, or they like seeing horses, she thinks you're the enemy. She thinks you're scum and vile. She represents an organization that have had people arrested and charged by the Federal Bureau of Investigation for going into animal shelters and saying, we're going to get these animals new homes. We're going to adopt them. And then later being discovered discarding the carcasses of those healthy puppies and kittens in garbage bins and dumpsters. That's a factual story that actually happened. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's who those people are. Over 83% of the animals in PETA's care since 1989, right up until last year, slaughtered. There are members of PETA acting on the instructions, allegedly, of the founder of that organization kidnapping dogs from people's backyards in California, slaughtering them within the hours, and then giving them a gift basket. Oh, sorry for your loss, but you shouldn't have had that dog in the first place. Dog was perfectly healthy. These people are insane. And the CEO of the BHA didn't fight back, didn't say, I'm not going to take lectures on animal welfare from a scumbag organization like yours. Who do you think you are? Why are Sky platforming this person? No, because people for ethical treatment of animals, they're very, very good at getting their message out there and hiding exactly what their intentions are. These people are vile. And by the way, the sister organization of Animal Rising, do you know who that is? Just Stop Oil. So they can go back to gluing themselves to famous works of art or throwing orange paint on politicians, because that's what they're good at. And that's who these people really are. Deluded psychopaths.
The benefits from horse racing by far outweigh, the not having horse racing as an object. It's just massively superior, isn't it? I mean, like you said, we get peak. Go and see these horses. They're beautiful creatures. They are amazing to look at. They're just muscle. They are trained to absolute peak. You can't just expect to leave them in the wild. You see people saying that they should be used as petting animals. It's like,
they don't even want that, Joe. They don't even want that.
Size?
When you're on a race course and you're there in the parade ring or you're out and about and you're just looking at the horses gallop, you're going back to agriculture. There's something really special about it. There's something really, really nice about that. And there is a bizarre attack on agriculture in Britain and Ireland and around the world. A really, really weird, bizarre attack on the agricultural industries. And one of the ways you can destroy that is to destroy British racing. And British racing, there's so many races that have names that echo the past or a major historical figure. Look at Royal Ascot. Royal Ascot is almost a testament to the past of what made Britain great and what has made the British Empire around the world and what Britain now is today. From royalty, the monarchy, incredible place names, incredible achievements. Racing acknowledges all of that. Well, if you want to try and destroy that, destroy what Britain's history was, what made Britain great. I'm an Irish person. I can acknowledge the greatness of Britain, then destroy a sport that acknowledges it. It's really weird, the attacks on the agricultural industry. Really, really strange, the attacks on racing. None of it based in logic, none of it based in fact. All of it misinformation and disinformation and based on emotion. Emotional blackmail. It's not factual evidence. Oh, you're murdering racehorses. You want to wipe them all out. Literally. That's what you're campaigning for. It's crazy stuff. Really is crazy.
Just on what like Joe was saying there about like the sort of the bond that we have with these horses. I've heard it said a million times on ITV, and they try and go like they're our friends, they're our mates. I've never heard it done justice. I'd like to give it a go if I can. Like they're closer than friends. They're closer than mates. You don't see your mates all the time. Like their family underplays it. Like you don't. Not everyone gets on with their family. Like they are. You have a bond. Like say like with my horse Larry. Like I can't explain it. You're the same person. Do you know what I mean? His fate is tied to mine, no matter what, for the rest of his life or the rest of my life, whichever comes first. But there's no way of explaining it. There really isn't. It's a closeness with another animal. It's above and beyond what dogs are. And I know like people are very, very close to their dogs, but have that bond with a horse to fully trust an animal with your life, which is what you're doing every time you go out there. And like with Larry, I know no matter what, he's going to do his best for me every time. Having that, it's just an intense knowing another animal doesn't speak your language, doesn't understand what you're saying, is willing to lay down everything for you just because you asked. That can't be replicated anywhere else, I don't think, in life with pets or family. Or it's like going into war with someone and knowing that they've got your back no matter what. When you've got that closer bond with a horse like I do with Larry, like it's really, really hard to explain. And I wish everyone in the world could feel it, because it's it's incredible when you're out there and you know you're just one being for that amount of time. It's a real shame that some people will never get to experience it, but it's magic. It's unlike anything I've ever felt.
I think you've explained that eloquently. And I'm sure you feel like you'd like to try and expand on it and explain it even more. And I think there's a way of doing that, by the way. But I thought you've done that brilliantly. And anybody who's had a dog, you understand the bond that there is between you and your pet. If you've had a cat, you can understand the bond that there is. The trust that animal has in you. They need you to survive. They need you. They come to you for attention and love. You just said sometimes you don't get on well with your family. How eloquently put. That bond is there between you and the animal. It's never broken. The animal doesn't shun you. They're there for you. And when you're feeling quite low and you walk in the door and you don't feel good about yourself, or you've had a tough day and you see your cat smiling at you, or you think they're smiling at you, but they're coming up to you to give you a bit of attention, or your dog runs up to you to give you, they're delighted to see you. What that can do for your heart, what that can do for your soul, it's incredible. But you're not going into battle together. On a horse, you are. Whether you're jumping a fence and show jumping, or doing cross-country riding, or competing in a point-to-point, you two need one another. You both have to be at your best. And if you're not, you're going to get injured. And so when you do that together, that's a bond you both have that can never be broken. And I don't know why Champions Full Gallop didn't try to do that. It failed in everything it was attempting to do. No one talks about that show. Nobody does. And there's not a single member of this panel who would say, oh, you know what? You should really watch season 1 of that. No, it was terrible.
I've still not seen it.
There's no point in watching it, George. There's no point in watching it. Now, season 2 might be better, and we'll see. I'm not passing any judgment on the David Power Cup yet, because the whole point of that was to make the documentary out of it. So let's see what they do. But I'm not optimistic about that. The Netflix documentary, Race for the Crown, now that looks good. That looks good. And Netflix have got a proven track record of being able to make really compelling documentaries. So we'll see. This sport has a huge opportunity to be able to break through and transcend. And I think the way of doing that is social and digital media right now. The biggest streaming platform in the world isn't Netflix, it's YouTube. And that's what needs to be lent into. The New York Racing Association have done it with Aqueduct. They'll do it again with Belmont. They stream all their races on YouTube. It's fantastic. I think British racing, Josh Apiafi talked about it on this show before. There should be a digital media strategy to broadcast racing in that way. Because 7.5 million people watched the Grand National in 2023. 6.1 million people watched ITV last year. 5.2 million this year.
Are betting app viewings taken into consideration?
No.
I don't know.
No. And I would imagine that's a very good point. Because I would imagine that when over 17 million people are betting on the Grand National in the UK alone, people are watching it on Racing TV, they're watching it on the racing app, they're watching it on their betting site. I'm guessing that's what's happening. That was our thoughts on the Grand National. We're going to get stuck into the Aintree Grade 1s in our next episode. You can watch the episode for free, of course, on YouTube. Listen to it on your favorite podcast app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, all the good podcast apps, and some rubbish ones as well. It's coming your way next.
The Final Furlong podcast is proudly brought to you by Jeff Banks Bet. Get up to £500 refunded as real money for new Jeff Banks online accounts after your first month of betting. Use promo code FFP500 at jeffbanks.bet.